Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so you can call in with any questions related to clinical psychology, including any emotional or psychological issues, parenting issues, and relationship issues as well. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram, or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show, or suggest topics or books for the program, and the shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, the studio number, 310-441-0555. So, going to do a book of the week. I didn't do any shows last week, so I did the book from 2 weeks ago on Monday's show, and today I'll be doing last week's book of the week, which is Projections by Carl Deiseroth. Projections by Carl Deiseroth, a story of human emotions. And so Dr. Deiseroth is a professor of bioengineering and also a psychiatrist at Stanford University. And this book it's about neuroscience, but it's about more than that. He presents some case studies with a lot of depth and empathy, and definitely reminded me of the great late Oliver Sacks in the way that he talks about these patients that he interacts with, both in how he interacted with them, but also how he discusses them and describes them. Also, what's fascinating is that he does some research that I did not know about, a new type of field, you can call it, of optogenetics. And so optogenetics, it's really fascinating, and I actually would like to see more about it and learn more about it. But what they're doing is using proteins from some plants or algae that transform light into energy. They are able to put these in some neurons, into brain cells of animals, and then using light, they can then trigger specific neurons or groups of neurons and pathways, and then help determine how the brain is doing certain things in the moment. I always, of course, wonder when this kind of research is done, the harm to animals and how they're affected, and something we always have to be very aware of and mindful of. But at the same time, there is something to be gained, and it's always finding that balance. And if there's a way to do it without harming the animals, then that to me is the best way to go about it. But what the research has enabled to be determined is some understandings of what might cause certain behaviors, certain actions, certain types of thinking, and also it can have implications when we understand how things work, how they don't work, and then using that, it can also help us to treat people dealing with different mental illness or issues and disorders. So the field of optogenetics is a very promising one, and he has done a lot of research, and also other labs, and he shares some of their research too, are using this new type of technology and technique to really understand different facets of experience. And I was going to say the human experience, but of course we're looking at animals and mammals, and so really it's more about just living beings and some of the ways that we do certain things. And so he goes through the book, and each chapter has a certain theme, from depression, and also when it comes to depression, even crying, to suicidality comes up, issues of cutting comes up, eating disorders also, and I might touch on that a bit later too. And in each one, he explains a case study, one of his patients or sometimes a few patients, and then also some understanding of what the research might be telling us or can tell us or illuminate about what individuals are going through. And he writes quite beautifully as well, which I thought was fascinating. He shares early in the book that he, from a young age, had a love of literature and poetry, and he writes in a very poetic type of a way. which I think is meaningful because it's not just this dry description of the science or things that are going on, but it's adds this emotional dynamic to it, which to me is interesting when you consider what he's doing is maybe some people might think it's demystifying or taking away some of the special feeling we have about certain aspects of our experience. So for example, if they do research and they find, oh, these are the cells that activate when a mother is looking for her baby, and these are the cells that activate when a mother is feeding or wants to feed her baby. For some people, this way of deconstructing these experiences and saying, oh, it's just these cells, can take away what we think is something more magical or meaningful about those experiences. So, oh no, a mother's love is something so wonderful and beautiful, we can't break it down into some components or into these cells. But really, at the end of the day, unless we assume a supernatural type of experience, everything that we experience and go through, it's happening in the cells in our body, or it's happening in our neurons. That's what's creating the feelings that we have. So in a way, he's deconstructing them and in ways breaking them down and showing us how we can specify certain aspects of experience with certain cells and certain pathways in the brain. But also in the way he writes about it, I think it keeps the sense that it is something beautiful still. Even if I know what makes me feel something and how it's functioning in my brain, it doesn't take away from my experience of those things or make them less beautiful or special. So I thought that's an interesting dynamic that hit me at the end of the book, thinking about how he's woven these different aspects of life, from the scientific but also to the literary and the poetic, in writing about these experiences. It's in a way what we're trying to do, and we understand ourselves as well. So as I mentioned, there's different chapters on things, and the aspect on depression was interesting, showing what parts might be related to even crying and what might make us cry. And a lot of this research is new, but it does show that there can be very specific parts of the brain that might be affecting different aspects of even things like anxiety, where avoiding things might feel a certain way, startling might be affected by certain things, and we could try to understand it using this new technique of optogenetics, which can help us isolate in real time what's going on. Because we can look at a brain afterwards, after a person or an animal has died, but that doesn't give us a lot about how things are functioning. And even with things like fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, we have a hard time making it as specific to the moment of what's going on, even though the images can be taken rapidly. But with optogenetics, it's really fascinating that they can isolate, even, he says near the end of the book, they've been isolating single cells, which is quite fascinating, and seeing what they do and how they might respond. The chapter on eating disorders is quite interesting because, as he describes it, it's really strange to think that in individuals, for example, with anorexia nervosa, where they're completely trying to restrict food to the point where it could kill them, and oftentimes, sadly, it does. It's this strange paradox of somehow the brain, or part of the brain, part of the self, is going against its own survival in a very extreme way, in a very basic way of not feeding itself, something that we think of as such a basic drive. But somehow the brain is overpowering that or overcoming that. And so this allows him to take a foray into the explorations of the self. And what does it mean to say we have a self? And is there a part that is us, and then there are these drives? Is all of it us? Are we all fragmented in some way? And it's quite, it's one of those things where there's not going to be clear answers, a lot more questions, but it does make you question and think about these things that we take for granted, that, oh, I am me, and it's just this one entity. Well, what does that even mean? Within me, maybe there's many entities, or maybe even where I end and you begin is not so clearly defined as we think. There was some physical distinction, but what else does that really mean if within me there's many me's? Who's the me that wants to do something one day and then the next day doesn't? Are those two different parts, or is it all just one part. I think it makes sense to think of many different things happening within us at a given time. So we have these varying aspects, and there could be some overall observer. That's the part that's complicated and not clear, and I'm not even clear on what really is the way to understand it. Is there an observer that's more than me that then deals with these different aspects of self, or different drives or different desires? Is it really like some kind of a political, we can think of a government body where there's these different aspects, or the different members of the citizens are voicing their opinions, and different things get louder at certain times, and they might become the issue that takes place, or they have to fight it out in different ways. It's hard to say exactly what's going on, and even thinking about it is hard because we're using our brains to try to understand ourselves, and that's always going to be complicated. But I thought that was quite interesting and fascinating. Near the end of the book, he brings up a few issues in the last few pages that I thought were interesting and wanted to share as I wrap up talking about the book. He talked about how the field of science, as we go forward, on one hand, it's understanding that we don't understand a lot of things. I talked about this Monday when I was discussing quantum physics, that we see these things and observe these things that we can't quite explain or understand, and we have to at some level accept that, and we'll continue to try to understand them better, but we have to know that we likely won't get to a capital T truth, meaning that we understand things fully and we know that we know it all. We probably won't, but we try to understand better. But he also shared that what he's doing with optogenetics is really bringing together research that's been happening for a long time on plants and things that seem totally unrelated to the brain. One would never make the connection to think that this type of research on plants is in any way going to help illuminate brain functioning, but indeed it has. And so it's another reason to inspire us to keep studying and understanding things, and we won't always know how they're going to connect and interrelate and inform each other, but they will. So we want to just keep on learning. Sometimes we think, well, what's the point of learning this? And a lot of times we don't really know, but the better we understand things, the better we can use that understanding to understand more and understand things that might at that point seem unrelated, but later may come to, we might find that interconnection. He also talked about violence. I was surprised that he said there's 3 topics to end the book, and that was one of them. But he was talking about certain research that he said is kind of fascinating but also horrific, where on mice, I think it was mice or some kind of rodent, they can stimulate certain cells that might make them become violent when they weren't before. So they're in a cage with another mouse, and they're not threatened by them, and they're not being violent, and then they stimulate these cells, and all of a sudden they get very aggressive and violent, which is quite shocking and hard to see. But then it makes us think, and he brings up, well, what about humans? And we look at people with psychopathy who have, let's say, antisocial personality disorder, who are violent, aggressive, and don't care about others. How much can we say they're in control of what they're doing? And so it also brings up aspects of free will. And we'd like to think that everyone has control over what they're doing, or we know, but are there variations in what's going on? I think we, of course, have to hold people responsible, but we might understand better what's going on in people's brains, and that might help us understand what they're going through. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of talking about the book, how we might be able to help them. Maybe we can figure out how to change these types of things. But I thought that was an interesting topic he brought up. And the last one is about consciousness and what that means, our own awareness. It's hard to say what that is. How do we break that down? Are we going to find the cells that make that happen? Is it some interconnection of cells? What does that even mean? This hard question of consciousness. I'm not sure we'll ever get a satisfactory answer, because I think it's in a way that we can never really understand the concept of something like that. What does it mean to feel something or to feel aware? It's qualitative in a way that I don't know if we'll understand. Maybe, I hope someday someone's listening to this in the future and saying, oh, we figured that out a long time ago, and it's really simple. Always when we're living in any day and age, what we think of as really complex, or we think we figured everything out. Everything we know we think is a lot, and the things we don't know we think we maybe never will. So maybe someday we will know that. But in this book, he does a great job of exploring the brain and what we know about the brain. It exposed me to optogenetics, which is a new realm of studying the brain and trying to understand how certain behaviors and feelings and experiences happen, which I thought was quite fascinating. And there was a focus in the book on people's subjective experiences, which I thought was quite fascinating. And his own interest in literature, in a way, translates to that when we're trying to understand people's psychological, psychiatric issues, really the only way or the main way we really get to that is through their words, that they tell us about that experience. It's really the best thing we have, better than any other tests that we can currently do. And so that was also interesting. And you see that as a psychiatrist, him talking to his patients to try to understand them better. So I highly recommend this book. It just came out recently in this year, called Projections by Carl Deiseroth. All right, let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hi, Dr. Farid. This is Theo. I'm giving you a call from Las Vegas.
All right. Thanks for calling. Let me know what your question was about.
Of course, yeah. So my parents said a lot of great things about you, and they told me to give you a call because so I'm having a hard time with our son because so we would only give him his pacifier when we would put him to sleep. And he is 16 months now. And we took him to the dentist, and the dentist said, you should probably take the pacifier away or replace it with another one. And we did that about a week ago, and he's just been having a really, really hard time going to sleep. We would rock him, and then, we put him down, and he wakes up every 2 hours or so, and then he just starts crying. And then sometimes even, cries so much that we can't even have him calm him down, so we tried leaving him for a little bit to see if he would find he'd be able to soothe himself, but it's just not getting to that point to soothe himself. But we still try to go in there and reassure him that give him some love every 5-10 minutes, but it hasn't really been working. But it's just been getting worse kind of, and as of last night, we were with him all night. Each one of us barely slept 45 minutes or so, but yeah. So I just wanted to, get your input on that. And do you think we should give him his pacifier back? Do you think we should continue this until he gets used to it? And I just don't want it to affect him, long term. I don't want anything to be, emotionally affect him. So I just wanted to get your input on that.
Okay, yeah, let's look a little bit deeper at what you've done so far and what's been happening. So how long have you been doing this, taking away the pacifier?
So we just started it a week ago.
Okay.
And, and it's just been, it's just been kind of initially, right, first day, it was hard, and then it was kind of second day was hard, third day kind of got a little bit easier, but I'm thinking it was because already so tired because he was losing so much sleep, right? Mm-hmm. Because initially, he would sleep a good 12 hours with his pacifier. He would sleep from 8 to 8, and then he would take a 2-3 hour nap, right? And then, but as we've been doing this, as of the past few days, the 14 hours of sleep is kind of turning into 8-9 hours of sleep now, and maybe not even that as of last night, probably only a few hours last night. So,
okay.
So yeah, it's been about a week, and we have been, trying to, take the pacifier, but he wakes up. He wakes up every 2 hours, and then as soon as he realizes he's in his bed, or the pacifier's not there or something, I don't know. He just starts crying. He just starts crying and we have to go comfort him. If not, he just stand there and cry until,
Now, during the day, does he try to get the pacifier, or does that come up, or it's only at night?
No, we never gave him pacifier during the day. If he's just hanging out, we never give him pacifier. The only time we gave him pacifier is when we would put him down for a nap, and when we would put him down for sleep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean that it's obviously, the word pacifier, it's like it's calming, it's making you feel calm, and he's been used to that, and now when he doesn't have it, he's feeling something is missing and he doesn't have that comfort. And going back to what the dentist said, what was the issue there? And I know you said the dentist mentioned using possibly another pacifier. So, did you try that?
Yes. So the dentist said the issue is that his I'm sorry, I forgot what the word was exactly for it, but he said his mouth is narrowing, so it won't be good for his teeth, and also he could end up with like speech problems or whatever the case may be, because the pacifier that we're giving him is the long one, and we did try to replace it with another pacifier, which the doctor was talking about, which is the shorter one, which is thicker. But he just wants to have nothing to do with it. He sees it, he throws it. He just wants to have nothing to do with that new pacifier.
I see. Okay. Yeah, so it's a tough one because we don't want to, like you said, you don't want to hurt him, and but at the same time we want to not make it like it's too big of a deal in the sense that it's only been a week or so. So we have to see how this is going to proceed. As I mentioned, he's losing something that's giving him comfort, and also it's just something he's used to when he's sleeping, and not having it feels like something is missing. Even most people fall asleep in certain positions that they're used to, and even if they try to sleep in a new position, they can't do it if they're told, well, this is bad for your back or your neck or whatever it might be. It's very hard for even us as adults to fall asleep in a new position. We're creatures of habit in the sense that we expect something, and when that expectation is there, we can then do the next thing. But if it's not, it's hard to do something even for an adult. So we want to first understand that it is really hard for him. The way you talked about it, it seemed like you were not downplaying what he was going through, but one thing parents sometimes do is like, oh, it's just a pacifier, why is he making it such a big deal? But we have to understand it's this full sense of safety and comfort that he is losing, and to fall asleep, we need to feel that safety and comfort to help us sleep. Now we could try other things, like we don't want to replace one the dentist saying bad habit with another, but other ways of comforting him to help him fall asleep. Whether it's holding him a little bit more till he falls asleep, or being there by his side till he falls asleep. And it seems like you're trying some of that, but what have you done in helping him by being there, in a way, you being, you or his mom being the pacifier to some level, replacing that? What have you tried in that way?
So we've been trying to, because usually when we would give him the pacifier, right, he would kind of know it's time to sleep, and he would kind of, just mellow out and just, we would start rocking him, and he would like fall asleep, and we just put him down, and he'll be good. But as of lately, like we go in the room to start rocking him, but we rock him for a long time, let's say, and then but he just continuously wants to get out of the rocking position, right? But we continuously try to I try to read books to him, and then we've tried to give him like a little toy, or like not a toy, like a like a stuffed animal, or like a little blanket, or things like that. But there's none that he really actually ends up attaching to. So it's just kind of been like he doesn't really, he just pretty much. We try to like rock him, right, and then we rock him for a longer period of time, and just try to hang out and sing to him. But and then let's say if he eventually falls asleep after an hour or two of us rocking him, or whatever the case is, and this has gotten a lot worse the past 2 days. But so he falls asleep because he's exhausted, but as soon as we're about to put him down in his bed, he just wakes up and starts crying, like really bad. He almost like lost his voice these past few days because he's been crying so hard, as far as
so it's even as you mentioned, the routine, some really big part of his routine is not there, and having the pacifier gets him, it's comforting him, which itself has power, but then it's also part of this, it's sleep time. He's getting himself ready, and now it seems like it's harder for him to initiate that, getting comfortable, getting into that sleep mode. Even the way you described it, it's like when you're rocking him and he doesn't have the pacifier, he doesn't get it. Like it's not, it doesn't make him feel like it's time to go to sleep because something really big for him is missing. So we're going to have to try to create also a new sleep routine. Is there anything else you used to do other than rocking him? And you mentioned like blankets or teddy bears. Was there anything he would hold when he would sleep?
No, it was pretty much just the pacifier, yeah, and then we would just rock him and sing to him, and then but always obviously in the room we have the monitor which also has the the wind sound, right? So obviously you would like kind of hear the wind sound too, I thought, and kind of think it's time to sleep, because the wind sound only plays when it's time to sleep, But
Right.
the wind sound's still there, We've been really good with maintaining the bedtime, overall. Like we'd always put him to sleep around like 8 o'clock or so, and then in the morning we'd wake up 7, 8ish, and then we'd do his nap around like noon. And we've been trying to maintain that, but it's just super off now because he doesn't sleep.
Yeah, and I would, the timing, especially in the morning, I can, depending on, both of your work or schedules and things, I can understand that the time does matter in a way. So it's not to say, I'm sure he can't just wake up anytime, but I would get a little bit more lax with the timing, like, 8 p.m. To us, 8 p.m. means something, but to the kid, it really doesn't as much as we probably think it does, even like in their physical sense. They're not going to sense the time. So I would be more lax with that as far as not being so concerned if the timing is off. It probably will be. We're making a big change. So I'm sure it's tough when you're saying he was regular with the sleep, which also allowed you and your wife to have more sleep and comfort and all of that. So I get it that this is a big disruption. But I think for a while we might have to accept that the timing might be off. Even the naps or how many he takes or how he takes them might be off, and accept that for a little while too. So even, with the sleeping, I maybe would let him get a little bit more tired before initiating it if he seems okay. I know there's always that sweet spot, or maybe it's a sour spot, where if they don't sleep and then they get really restless, so we don't want to let him get to that point. So I understand not waiting too long, but I wouldn't push him to sleep so quickly, like right at 8.
Makes sense.
But you want to initiate the process. I don't know if you do things like dimming the lights and doing certain things to get him a little bit more comfortable. And we want to try to create a not necessarily new routine, but add something that might get him more used to it. It seems like you're doing the story time. That's good. The rocking can be good, but something else, because it's this missing this comfort and missing this one big piece that it seems like it's hard for him to kind of engage the sleeping process and get comfortable. So we want to try to create new aspects to the routine that might be comforting. And it's only been a week or a few days, so it could take a little bit of time. I'm sure every night of this is pretty stressful for the two of you to go through, and of course for him, which I know you mentioned you're worried about him. So we want to comfort him through this. He's not able to soothe himself through that. The pacifier was giving him that. It'll take him some time to be able to do on his own what the pacifier gave him. So he needs your help to help him get through this. He'll need you to stay with him a little bit more. Like I said, we want to be careful not to now create, bringing him to the bed or create a new bad habit that will be hard to break later on as well. But being there with him more, I think, will be important. Waiting even longer. Maybe when he had the pacifier, you could wait 2 minutes after he falls asleep and put him down and he's good. You might have to wait like 15 minutes now before you put him down, so he's a little bit deeper in his sleep than you did before. So he's going to need a little bit more from the two of you to kind of make up for the pacifier that's now missing. If he's not taking that other one, we're not going to force him to take the other pacifier if he was very against it. So, he's going to need a little bit more. Likely this will be a process that takes a little bit of time, but as I was saying, we want to be very much in the moment with him, but we want to also take a step back. He's going to likely get through this okay. It's going to just take some time of adjusting, and we can understand that it's really hard for him.
Gotcha. Yeah, so like, for example, like last night or the last 2 nights pretty much, we do spend a lot more time, after we wait after he sleeps. We wait, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to put him down, but it's like he's waiting for us to put him down. As soon as we put him down, it starts like bawling. Like there's no way. It's almost at a point when there's no way he wants to sleep in his bed unless he's like he doesn't understand it. Do you know what I'm saying? So like last night, my wife was with him, and he wouldn't sleep in his bed whatsoever. Like she was with him straight. She would put him to sleep at 9 something. He woke up at 12, and he wouldn't go to his bed until 4 a.m. And then my wife finally, laid something on the floor and tried to lay down with him, and he was up for another hour and a half and wasn't sleeping. Then it finally fell asleep with her on the floor for about 2 hours or so. And then he kind of woke up too. But I mean, as far as like saying you don't want to create other bad habits, so as far as us being there with him, all night, do you think he would get used to us being there all night?
Obviously he could, but it slowly could change. And so, I mentioned the habit and routine, but also it is a very calming type of a thing. So as much as it could feel to us, and I get what you're saying, it's almost like he's like, oh, don't you dare put me in my bed right now. It might be, in a way, he's telling us it's very scary for him, or he feels not comfortable without the pacifier when he's in that bed now. Like it's just uncomfortable, even, I don't want to say scary, but makes him feel anxious or really not calm. And so he's almost afraid of it, or he doesn't like that feeling. So I'm okay with sleeping with him more than you were before, giving him that comfort and slowly making it less. I don't think that's the worst thing, because if he's really not sleeping, he probably will get tired and get so tired that he will fall asleep. So again, this is another one of those, we care about the moment, but we look at the big picture, that if he doesn't sleep well one day, I know it also takes a toll on both of you, but he will get more tired and sleep easier the next days. We don't have to force him to go back to sleep. But I'm not so worried about a little bit of sleeping by him more than you were before. And that's not, with his age, I'm not so worried about that.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I have a couple more questions for you, for him. So one, when we were sleep training him initially, right, we were reading books and whatnot, and there was a method that said, rock him, put him down, step out of the room, give him 5 to 10 minutes, and if if he's crying, it's fine, but like try to have him find something to soothe himself. Then after like 10 minutes or so, if he's still crying, go in, do the same routine, put him down. If he's crying, step out. So we kind of sleep trained him that way initially, and he, after that he was great. He's been sleeping 12 hours and whatnot. Do you think we should do the same method again?
Well, you could try it. I mean, with these methods, there's a lot of different sleep training methods, and I don't think there's one that's the best one, and you have to do it that way. It depends also on you and on him. And because you're making this big change, it might be different this time. Sometimes we'll tell parents, well, you have a new baby, it might be different than your last baby. But even sometimes within the same baby, we'll see some different things. And so now, because it's taking away the pacifier, he might have a harder time with it. But you can try that method and see how it goes. With him. I usually don't like if they're crying for 20, 30 minutes. That's not ideal. Just let them, and checking in on him, like you're saying, is good, but you have to be aware of how much you're going to let him cry without soothing him yourself. But so if that worked before, I would say try it, because you guys have experience with it, and he in a way does. But just be aware that because this pacifier seems to have had a big impact on him, it could be a different experience this time around compared to what you had last time.
Got it. And yeah, I mean, it's just because sometimes, like, I try that a little bit, but it's just sometimes his crying, like, I don't let him cry over like 10 minutes or so, but sometimes his crying gets so bad that like nothing calms him down for like a good 10, 15 minutes after I get him, So that's what I was kind of worried about, and it was bothering me with that as well.
And that's the hard thing about these types of things, like we're trying to help them soothe, but if we leave them alone, sometimes they get so agitated that they can't get themselves down from how agitated they are, how high they get. Now, I know you said that you have a couple more questions. Is that right?
Yes. So
okay. We're a little bit. Let me. I'll stop you there for a second, because we're kind of past the commercial break, but I want to give you a chance to ask those questions. So I'm going to put you on hold, and we'll talk after the break. Okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we're with a caller. Let's go back to them now. Caller, are you still there?
Yes. I'm
okay.
Sorry, I won't take up a lot.
No, that's fine. You said you had a couple more questions, so yeah, I wanted to make sure we had some time for that. Go ahead.
One thing that I was thinking, So I feel like we took his pacifier away kind of cold turkey, and I feel like we didn't prepare him enough for it. So one thing that I was thinking is, what if we give him his pacifier back now? And, so that suits him for now. And then a few months from now, he has more understanding. We can kind of talk to him and like tell him about a pacifier fairy, and, have him read books about taking the pacifier away or whatever the case is. And then kind of see if that would be an easier transition for him. So at that point, he's going to be closer to like 2 years old, and then he would I think understand a little more. So I don't know. I kind of wanted to know what your thought is about that.
Well, my first thought when you said giving it to him, I can get it, but I think it might make it harder later on to do it. And I don't know the dentist and how much they said it's important to do this quicker or not. But in a way, giving it back to him might make it worse. And not to compare your child to someone who's dealing with addiction, but in a way it's like giving back that drug to then take it away again might even make it harder. So that was my first thought, is that it could make it even harder later on to take it away. And maybe initially not doing it cold turkey, I get what you're saying. It could have been a better way to wean him off, but it would have always been hard no matter how you did it. But now reintroducing it to him only to take it away soon might be harder. I get what you're saying, that maybe he'll be older and you'll handle it more. I'm not so thinking that explaining it to him he's going to care too much about. It's like, if there's a pacifier fairy, or if you show him dental x-rays and what's going to happen to his teeth, or whatever it is that we try to do to show him, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference, because he just won't like him. If he was much older, yes, but a few months, maybe it'll make a little bit of difference. But to bring it back and to take it away, my first thought is that might make it harder, because right now, even if you try to give it to him, he's going to not, if you say, well, let's just give it to him for a little bit, not as many hours as before, he probably won't accept that. But I can get it that you're trying to find a way to soothe him.
Makes sense.
Yeah. How has it been impacting the two of you? Just that I know we're talking about him, but how are you both handling this?
Well, my work is super stressful as is, so it's definitely a lot of stress, but at the end of the day, I'll do anything for my son, so, but I think my wife is definitely more stressed out than I am. And, she just, because she's the kind of person where if something, is going wrong, she would get down, but I'm the type of person that pushes with everything to, try to do something happen, so it's just, we're both trying really hard, it's hard, but,
Sure.
It's not the end of the world,
It's not, and I'm sure you're both obviously trying your best, and because you're two different people, you might deal with things differently. But yeah, it's important to, we think about the kid and this like recipe for dealing with something, and there are techniques and things, and you're trying to figure them out. But how you both are doing is really impactful too, because my guess would be both of you, maybe your wife more than you're going to be getting anxious around his sleep time too. And that's going to affect him. Yeah. Because we're talking about calming. Maybe we need two pacifiers for you and your wife more than we need something for him, because we need you both to be more calm. Because if she's a little bit more stressed and anxious, like, oh, what is he going to do? How is he going to react? He's going to feel that. He doesn't need language to pick up on that. We pick up these things up non-verbally. That anxiety is going to make it harder for him to soothe. So it could be good, and as I was saying to you, to remember that this is tough, it's challenging. We care about every feeling he has every day. We care about him in that sense, while we also maintain the mindset that, lots of things, every baby, every adult you now see didn't have just like a perfect sleeping pattern from day one to childhood. There's always these hiccups and things that come up in different ways in different kids. So it could be good for your wife also, and so in the same way, we don't want to undermine her feeling. This is tough and stressful, and she loves her kid and wants him to be okay, and it's affecting her sleep, and that also is going to affect her mood and how she feels. So it is important, but as a reminder that he's going to be all right. This isn't going to make or break or have some huge negative impact on him. And actually, the more we don't worry about it, the better we'll be able to handle it, and the better it'll help him get through it. Because again, he's going to feel that anxiety that, oh, it's sleep, it's almost bedtime, it's 7:55, what's going to happen? He's going to feel that tension. And so now we're more tense, and we took away the thing that calms him down. So that's kind of a recipe to make him way more agitated and not calm. So that's also something to be aware of. And it's been just a week, and now I can say just a week when I haven't had to go through 7 sleepless nights or 7 nights where you've slept worse. So I get that. But in the grand scheme, keeping in mind that this doesn't mean, this is like something forever you're going to be dealing with, or he's forever going to have this like big sleep problem.
Okay.
So that's just something to keep in mind, and the two of you to be supportive of each other, throughout this process. The more you're together, that also just creates a better sense of calm, but also better for the two of you as well.
Makes sense. Understandable. Thank you so much, Doctor. I really appreciate your time. Big help.
Thank you. That was it. I thought you had a couple more questions, so I wanted to make sure you didn't forget anything.
No, that's fine. I just, I was just, worried about him, and I just want to make sure, it's not something that would affect him in the long term and whatnot, and if there's anything that we can do to adjust. But, you were great help with, giving me some pointers and answers and whatnot. So I appreciate it. I'll give it a shot and, see how it goes.
Sure. My pleasure. Yeah, good luck. And again, almost definitely, if we, could be sometimes good to think ahead. If we imagine a month from now, 2 months from now, or a year from now, this stuff will definitely be resolved, and it's not going to be something, but we have to deal with it now, and the two of you are trying to figure that out. But good luck with that. Thanks for the call.
Appreciate you, Doctor. Thank you.
Take care. All right, let's go to another caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks for calling.
Hi, I had a question about my 4-year-old son.
Okay.
And he he hasn't been eating from ever since he was probably 1 year old till now. Like not eating, but like he's never had normal foods like pizza, hamburger, Persian food, nothing. So like he only sticks with the certain types of food he eats. And now he's getting sick of those foods, which I know is going to happen. And he doesn't like go to new foods. Now he's just refusing all types of foods except like I would say chips, junk food. And if I stick with not giving him those until he eats actual like substance of food, he'll just go on a hunger strike for days. And then he'll throw up and gag if he doesn't like it, and even smells makes him want to throw up and gag. So it's more of like, I know it's not more, it's him being like defiant a little bit, and then more than that, it's probably his sensory overload because of his gagging and the smells and all that. And we can't ever go to restaurants with him because he's like, ew, what is that? And he won't eat anything. We have no choice because he'll starve.
Wow.
So yeah.
So I have a lot of thoughts, but before I get to that, what has his pediatrician said about, first of all, nutritionally how he's doing, but also just this overall eating issue?
So his pediatrician has referred us to OT, occupational therapy, ever since he was about, like before he even turned 2 years old, we were there. And now we're going to do more hours because it seems like he's turned for the worse. And he went to a nutritionist as well, and nutritionist unfortunately was no help for us. She just told me to give him stuff like smoothies, but he's more like of a pickier eater than that. Like I can't just go give him smoothie and all will be good. He'll refuse it, and when he refuses it, I can't force him to eat it. And so that was her only thing, like put powder in there, and then they said, like, is it him having acid? And it's not him having acid or anything build up, because why would he not gag over the chips or the chocolate, but gag over the rice?
Yeah. So the doctor, as far as nutritionally for his health?
Oh, he got checked for nutrition about a year ago, but a year ago he was a lot better. So he was good. Like he was in the cusp, like right on the border of being underweight, but he wasn't. So he was considered normal, and like iron levels were good because I am giving him multivitamins every day.
Okay. So when was the last time he had a checkup with the pediatrician?
So he's due for a checkup within this month.
Okay.
On his birthday.
Well, that's good to get that. And so birthday, he'll be turning 4?
Yes, he'll
Okay.
be turning 4.
And then the occupational therapy, was that initiated because of the eating?
Yes. It
Okay.
was just because of the eating.
All right. So clearly, as you said, there's a sensory sensitivity that's really strong, and you mentioned the define, and there could be and likely is because of that initial sensitivity, and then your responses and trying to help him eat. There probably are some power dynamics and things at play.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the defines, but I think if we look at really the core issue is that he's not trying to feel this way. It's just the way he responds to certain things is different than what we might expect, or for most children or most people, what they go through. And so I say that because it's tough. You're probably stressed about his eating, you're worried about it, and then if you feel like, oh, he's just doing this to bother me, or in some ways it can feel that way, that can make us react to it more negatively as well, to be like, he's just trying to bother me. Whereas it seems like he really does struggle, like you're saying, the gagging and those things, that's involuntary. He's not trying to do those things. And some kids are just born very sensitive to new smells, new textures, all sorts of things. And I'm sure you've tried a million things to see what he likes. But that could be difficult. And also for parents and for all cultures, but Persian culture too, we put so much emphasis on feeding our kids, and it is a good feeling, of course, to feed your child. And then when you're not, oftentimes parents can have a feeling of guilt that comes up, even though you're trying everything, but their guilt can come up. So I don't know if that's something you've experienced. Yeah. So there's going to be, so as always, even with the last caller, it was different, but there's still this, we have to look at our own feelings about what's going on and how that might actually negatively impact, of course, how we're feeling, but then even how we deal with the issue. So I just wanted to kind of set some of that groundwork, because we're about at a commercial break, and we can get into things a little bit more deeply after the break. So I'm going to put you on hold, and we'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back with a caller. Let's go back to them now. Caller, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. So we were talking about your son. He's almost 4 years old, and very, very restricted in what he eats. Did they give him a diagnosis for the eating?
So the pediatrician did not. He said he's not really familiar with that, but the OT gave him a diagnosis of sensory issue, like sensory processing, and then behavioral eating issues.
Okay.
That's what they have. It's not a set diagnosis, and I went and did my own research. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I don't know if he falls into it. I looked up this other diagnosis. It's called AFRAD. It's like AF. It's
like avoidant. Like food intake.
Avoidant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's like falls under it, but a lot of the traits he does exhibit, it goes under this. So my thoughts are this, but that's a really hard diagnosis to come by, because you need to like go through a lot of steps to get to that point. Like some go on feeding tubes when they reaches to that point, And obviously that's not what I want for him.
Of course not. I'm sure, and that talking about the your own feelings, I can't imagine that wouldn't bring a lot of anxiety for you. And most kids who have that don't get to that point. Almost most of them won't, but we obviously, I know you don't want to get anywhere near that. And I was just asking about the diagnosis, not that sometimes the labels are not as important, but I wanted to see what things had been addressed or looked at, because you mentioned the sensory. The sensory. Yeah. What else are there? Other things, to textures, touch, clothes? Does he have other?
So he does have for textures. So he goes for textures for eating purposes. It's crunchy, but then the smells bothers him. Originally, a while ago, sound bothered him a lot, but I worked through that with him, and it's not bothering him as much. Like, he doesn't care about it being too loud anymore, because I kind of like saw how you therapy through it and have him get used to loud sounds, and then he got used to it. And then he used to get really bad car sickness, like motion sickness.
Yeah.
And I did that as well. I really therapied him. I just asked the OT what we would do, and she just gave me like examples, and I just did it for a year straight, and it worked. And he's a lot better. Like I would say, like he used to be in the car for 5 minutes and throw up, and now he can be in the car for extended about like 30, 40 minutes, and he's okay. The only thing is he's on an empty stomach now, so I think the bile, the acid is building up, and that's what's making him sick, not necessarily the motion anymore.
Okay. And any other issues? How is he doing socially, language?
So he's actually amazing with social and language. He is a social butterfly, I would say. Like he's always talking to everybody, has so many friends. That's never been a concern of mine. He talks so much. He understands Farsi and English. He's he's thriving in that department.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes issues related to autism can be related to this, but it doesn't seem at all.
We did look at autism at first a long time ago, and they came back and said negative, and at this point there's no concern over autism, which is great for me. So
yeah,
I do think it's just more of like a sensory thing for him.
Yeah, it does seem that way. And I'm sure there's been a whole thousands of things that have happened, if not more, in this whole dealing with his eating, with you and him and other family members, and that also can become an issue for people when their kids have eating, restrictive eating. They go to family's house or parties, birthday parties, and it can become a whole thing of like, how do we deal with this?
Yeah.
And those are also issues to be aware of. As I said, we want to make sure we don't kind of pour more anxiety to this probably anxiety fire that's already there, that's what's causing a lot of this. So the more we make that an issue, the more becomes an issue. And I don't know how your family is, but Persian families can be very just obsessed with food and eating and taking the food we made for you and this stuff, and they can make it a big issue, or I know how to fix it for you if you just give him this. And so I can only imagine the things you've had to go through, and people giving their complete unsolicited advice and even demanding or forcing certain things. I hope there hasn't been a lot of that, but I can imagine you've had to deal with a lot. So I'm sure this has been a lot of pressure on you. I'm going through this. And tell me about the family situation, siblings, who else is living at home?
So it's my husband, his father, and no siblings yet. I'm going to have another child in October.
Okay.
And obviously I worry about this as well. But I know this is who he is. I didn't cause this, obviously. No. Hopefully that's not what I caused. And then my parents are around him a lot of times, like they're, part of his life. And my extended family as well. But I do have to always tell them, please do not talk about his eating in front of him. It's none of your business. Because he listens. He's very smart.
Of course.
So, like, if you say, like, oh, he won't eat this, he just, you know what I mean? He's very defiant, too. So if you want him to do something and he knows it, he won't do it. He won't do it. And if there's more pressure on him, like you said, oh, that's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So, like, me and my husband usually always tell people, let us worry about his food and you guys don't talk about his food. And if he doesn't want it, we worry about it. You don't.
Yeah, that's good, and I think you should make that clear, and then stand up for your family and really standing up for him, because the more we make it an issue, and of course, even if he wasn't verbally as advanced as you're saying, he would be picking up on these things, making comments, or he should eat this, why doesn't he? He's being loose, or he's being whatever reasons they might give to try
They're
to
saying loose most.
Yeah.
It's because you're giving him he's taking advantage of you, this and that, and I say it's not everything. It's not back in the day how it was. Everything is different, and it's a different situation.
Yeah, and these things are much more complicated than that. But I can imagine that the reaction people will have is like that you've created it, which already you're saying you have your own anxiety or guilt about that. Yeah. You don't need to hear their kind of makeshift theories about what's going on. But they're gonna say that, and every person and every Persian thinks they know the solution to even very complex things. Leave him with me for a week and it'll go away. Or
that drives me nuts. Yes,
Yeah.
My brother says I can fix him within 3 days if you give him to me, and I usually just say, "Oh, okay, thank you for your input."
Yeah, and even saying fix him, I didn't like that part of it, to talk about
like
him.
there's something
Yeah.
I messed up. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially I'm hoping that's not being said anywhere near him, for him to hear that about himself. But it is challenging, and so going back to him, we also have to imagine his experience with this is not pleasant. So he's having a hard time. These things just don't feel good to him.
No.
And so we want to be mindful of that, aware of that. If he's medically okay, and I know he has that pediatrician visit in a few weeks or so,
Right.
that try to really hold on to that, because we have our own ideas about food and eating and what you need and how much you need that oftentimes aren't really the reality of what's necessary. So try to remember that if the doctor's telling you he's okay physically,
Yeah.
then let's not make a problem when there isn't one, just because we think it has to
Right.
look a certain way.
Right.
And you mentioned, the way you worked with him. I don't know if you said you therapied him. I didn't hear if I cut.
So for his car sickness,
Yeah.
they said to go put him on a swing, for his motion, for his brain, and so he doesn't get sick, motion sickness.
Mhm.
So I would, throughout the day, I would take about 30 minutes throughout the day, and I would put him on a swing.
Okay.
And just swing him back and forth, and then I would try to take him places like 5 minutes, and then extend it 10 minutes, and just try to do all those things where I noticed OT would have been doing it, since we were at the point where a pandemic happened and we couldn't see anybody. So I kind of just wanted to fix something for him, and I did that. But
Okay. And that, that theme that you're describing there is really, when we talk about any kind of anxiety or fear, the way we overcome any kind of anxiety or fear is by slowly facing that thing. And so this is what you're, where you have a challenge is when we talk about this, though, it's not that you can just expose them in any way, anytime, and it's good. It can actually overwhelm them too. So it's finding that balance,
right.
which can be tough because it's not something that's going to be clearly written out, and he's not going to like it a lot of times, the initial kind of a thing. But a little bit of a challenge is good. Too much can break us. And so even with foods, I'm sure you've tried that, exposing him to different things, providing lots of different options. How has that gone? Do you do that where you leave out just stuff for him and see what he might be drawn towards?
Yeah, so if you see, every night is a buffet for him. I put everything that he likes, and then me and my husband will eat something else, and we'll put it in front of him, and he'll come over and look. I'm like, oh, and I try to have no force approach, just very lightly. I'm like, do you want to take a bite? And he's like, no, it looks ew. I'm like, okay. And then I'll go, try your food. But the thing is, I've noticed that he won't eat the foods obviously that I want, and they did mention to me to try to take the pressure out by giving him whatever he wants, and because he just needs the calories at this point, and he needs to be fed. So hopefully he'll eat some of the junk and then maybe eat some of the good. And I've been doing that recently, 2-3 days, and it's better because I don't want him to go hungry to bed, But then at the same time, I worry because how can he survive off of junk food all day?
Yeah, and of course, I mean, that's not the ideal, but I think even. I'm sure it seems like you're not really strongly, explicitly pressuring him, but even the try this or that, is putting a slight pressure on him. So I'd be aware of those things.
No pressure at all. Not even try it.
Yeah, I mean, just leaving it there, and it's there. And maybe you say you can ask him sometimes, "Would you like me to bring something?" But once it's there, I'd kind of give him the space to explore what he wants to explore. And I'm sure you're holding back in your head. You're probably thinking, just eat it. Why won't you eat this? But we have to try to hold on to that ourselves and realize that's our anxiety and not something we want to spill over to him. Because clearly, he's just trying to figure out his way. Because what we don't want to happen is he already has this kind of physical sensitivity. We don't want to add an emotional issue around eating, which you're in a position, you have to be ready that it's a very delicate one where easily it could turn into that because of how eating is an issue for him. And then if it becomes an issue of from a power struggle to mommy doesn't like me because I don't eat, or, I don't do this, those kinds of things will make, eating an issue for him on top of this physical thing. So what you're trying to do is overcome the physical thing that he's dealing with, but in doing that you might create an emotional problem on top of it, and we might not be able to fully change the physical part. I think you've probably accepted this, but I'll just mention it. He's probably never going to be a totally normal eater. More than likely it's possible, but probably he won't be just like everyone else. I don't know. How does that even sound to you?
I mean, I think that's true. I think I can't be in denial. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that also is to say that it wasn't because you did something that this is where we're at, or that would be his potential prognosis. It seems like it's pretty biological, a lot of what started what's going on. We just have natural reactions to things, just like two people can walk in a room, one feels kind of cold, one feels warm. Some of it might just be they run a little bit differently, so a lot of this seems like it's more just him and how he is. So it's not something you did that made him have this sensitivity. All we're trying to do is manage or help him get through the world. And let's say he eats a few things only. Another thing is we project our own feelings, right? Gosh, that sounds boring. And I know the health part I totally get, and there could be something there. Of course, I'd always defer to the doctors, but we can think, well, he's only eating that, and he's never trying this yummy food, which is so good, or this thing, which is so fun. Or we imagine him as he gets older and he wants to go out with his friends and different things, but he'll figure that out, even if he eats a few things. If he's okay with it, that's what's most important. He might just eat a few things and it'd be fine. Imagine if I told you there's 10 types of cuisines that you never even knew existed and you never had. You're still okay, even though you never eaten those things. So if he's okay, that's the most important thing, his health, of course. And then also if he feels good. If he said, oh, Mom, I wish I can eat those foods, but I can't, that would be a different thing. But it doesn't seem like that's at all what's going on. He has no desire to eat those things. So
I think it's overwhelming for him.
Yeah.
When he looks at it, I see it in his eyes.
Yeah. It seems like there's an overstimulation. I mean, that's when we're talking about these sensory issues. It's just like it feels like too much. Like even, some kids will put on a shirt and the feeling of the shirt feels like too much. They want to take it off or wear a different shirt. So it's a very biological, natural type of response. But yeah, it does seem like he gets overwhelmed. And even the gagging, it seems like he has like a very sensitive gag reflex. That's totally involuntary. But that just shows us his body just is a little more sensitive. It's almost like we all are trying to make sure we don't take in things that are harmful. Some people are more sensitive, and that could even lead to things like allergies or autoimmune types of things have a similar theme, but it's just we're more sensitive to those things. So, it seems like you're doing a whole lot. I would be very aware of your own feelings about what's going on, even consider going to therapy to talk about it, to explore that, because it's going to continue. It seems like this is something that you'll have to get used to in dealing with him. And so I would consider going to your own therapy to make sure your own feelings are being processed and dealt with, because already they're going to spill over a bit. We just want to minimize that spill, because that'll make it better, obviously first for you and your own well-being, but then even how it affects him.
Right. I agree. So do you think that I should place all the foods he likes, which is junk, and just as long as he's fed, and then the pressure is off too of I'm not pressuring him either, and he's eating. I mean, hopefully eventually he'll eat some substance as well, but take the pressure away too.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if that's working, so to speak, as far as how things are going, then I think keep that, and obviously you can every so often put new options and new things. That's part of the desensitization, is seeing it more. He might even see the food 4 times and not even want to touch it, but then the 5th time have maybe more comfort with it, because if it is the way you're describing it, new things are almost always going to seem threatening to him. They do to all of us, but for some people that response is stronger. So if he sees it a few more times, he might never, but he might be more open to trying it a little bit. So I think that that makes sense. I would definitely explore these things with his pediatrician too, because
Okay.
we'll see how he's doing health-wise. If he's okay, I would again make that's the most important thing. When we think of food, it means a lot of things to us. It's bonding, it's the enjoyment, so many things, nurturing. But at the end of the day, if he's getting what he needs from food, then that could be okay. That could be his experience and relationship with food, which might be very different from your own. But if he's okay, I wouldn't put a pressure that it needs to be more like something else,
Right. And then, they did refer him to play therapy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. To saying that could help because it's taking the pressure completely away. And OT is not, because OT is like licking it, smelling it, being around it. And that could be overwhelming for him. So they're saying play therapy because that's completely like maybe playing with the food and like drawing with it or something.
Well, the OT, they're the people that are the specialists on that, and I hope they don't overwhelm him. Again, they have to find that fine line
balance,
of pushing him a bit out of his comfort zone, but not too much that it overwhelms him. Now, play therapy, I'm not sure if, when you do play therapy, it's very open in the sense that the child, when I've done it, the child just comes into the room and they play, like they dictate. So I don't know if they're going to say, here, play with these carrots or play with this food. They might just let him play. And I think play therapy is great. And even when if you are even told how it's going to look, it might just look like the play therapist is just playing with your kid and you're like, how is this therapy? But it really can be very helpful for kids dealing with a variety of issues. So if that's something they've suggested, I'm very much in favor of that. But just know that it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be purely surrounding food and this eating issue. They might, I don't know what they would do, but likely just let him play and let him dictate where things go. So you might, he might have 10 sessions in a row where food never is directly mentioned once, and that might be okay. So I'm all in favor of that. Yeah, play therapy is great.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm just trying new, views of things to see, how I can help him because he's starting school soon, and I know he's going to leave here hungry, probably come back hungry.
Yeah, and I understandably you're anxious about that, and I hear it, and that's why I was saying again, making sure you're good is very important. And going back to how you were saying accepting it, you don't want to be in denial. This is likely an issue you're going to have to manage in some way his whole life. So I also don't want you to feel like time, we want to take care of him and not let things get worse, but it's not okay, we're going to fix this before school starts. It's going to be there, and we're going to see how we deal with it when school starts. But I'm definitely in favor of play therapy. I think it's great for kids to go through that. It's very much a process of helping them explore things, deal with feelings, not explicitly talking about the feelings, but it can help them really cope with a lot of things. So if he likes it and you find a play therapist he vibes with and that he has a good time, enjoys them, I think I'm all for it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your help and info.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you. Best of luck. Again, it's going to be a struggle. I'm sure it's tough, but keep in mind that if he's okay physically, that's the most important thing when it comes to eating, and we don't want to try to create a problem on top of that. But good luck with that.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Nice talking to you. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to another caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hi. Thanks for calling.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
So the reason for my call is regarding my 16-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of issues that we have with him. He up until maybe 6 months ago, we had no problem with him. But about 6 months ago, I noticed that one day, I found out that he's smoking weed. And basically, and he knew that I found out. So actually, I saw him while doing it. So, and I told him that we would have a talk about that, because that day we were going somewhere, we couldn't interrupt it. So, but later we learned that to hide to I don't know. He started taking pills because he couldn't take weeds anymore.
What kind of pills?
So, what we've heard is oxycodone and Xanax.
Okay.
So, and we noticed that he's not taking weeds anymore, and we thought that things are basically, maybe it was occasional. But we noticed a change in his mood, and one night she came upstairs and woke us up and said that he has some illusions, and basically we learned that it is because of the pills that he's been taking. So he told us that he's been taking pills, and that it's giving him hard time, and basically that he needs help.
So you said illusions.
So,
what do you mean by illusions?
he said things that he said that for example, I couldn't. I felt that my limbs are gone, so I cannot see my limbs. So, and he was very scared based on that. And he apparently that night, as he didn't have access to the pills, he'd taken some of, or snorted some of the Tylenol pills that we had at home, like a stronger Tylenols.
Okay.
And basically, we started some looking around and finding out how we can help.
Yeah.
So we started sessions with a counselor, and recently a couple of sessions with a psychiatrist. And basically they talk to him a couple of hours every week, and during these 6 months we tested him many times, either by these home test kits or taking him to the labs, and basically we have hardly seen any positive sign of using substances. So he claims that he's not used anything ever since.
Let me stop you there for a second.
I think he has managed to.
Yeah, he might be still, I don't know if he's, but even if we look at this dynamic that's been created, of course, I can understand you're concerned about him, the drugs he's using, and even that he resorted to snorting Tylenol. Definitely that's concerning. But if we try to create a type of, like a system where we're going to catch him, where it's like he's like a prisoner in the home, where we're trying to, monitor him in different ways. Is there any way you can, thank you. That setup is not likely going to help. And I would shift the focus. The drugs, that's a problem right now. But that's not the only problem. And that's probably not even the cause of how he got here. He emotionally is probably not doing okay. So I wouldn't make drugs the biggest issue. I would make how is he doing the biggest issue. Because clearly he's not okay if he's doing those things. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this: there are, if I can add another, just to ask, did he say he wants to stop, and I want help to stop using drugs? Like, What's happening there that started this process? Because if he doesn't want to stop, that's our biggest block to get him even help in that sense. So did he say, I want help to no longer use any drugs?
He has said, yeah, I don't know the exact terms he has used because he talked to my wife, and basically he has said that he needs help.
Okay. So he wants to stop.
And unfortunately, she's not here to help me with and so I believe, I myself believe that he's been using, maybe smoking something, very, seldom. And I've not been here. So he is also a bit of a manipulator. So sometimes he instead of solving things, he tries to manipulate the scenarios to get himself out of trouble. So the psychiatrist has come to conclusion that he has OCD and has some depression and anxiety.
Okay.
But to make it, basically to kind of confirm it further, he's given him some logs that he needs to basically fill up every day and kind of describe his daily mood with him.
Okay.
And it's ongoing. Basically, the sessions with the psychiatrist are ongoing. We did an MRI from his brain, and things appear to be normal. So they didn't find any damage to the brain, and we are also we have just one session with a neurologist just to see if any part of his neural system has been damaged. And although that has just been basically the first session and is not conclusive yet, but most possibly they will also have a EEG down the road.
Okay.
So with these said, another dimension to this. So the school that he goes in, he moved he started high school in a neighborhood that is not basically a lot of troubles in that neighborhood. And a lot of kids who are in that high school are from society levels where I don't want to call them bandits, but they do things.
Okay,
and he unfortunately.
But if I can stop you there,
there's based on the program that.
I know, but there's drugs in every high school in the United States of America. So I wouldn't make it about them. Your son sounds like he's suffering from mental illness, not from drugs in his school. I'm not so worried about that part. And I think the fact that you said I had no issues with him till 6 months ago concerns me that you were not aware that he was not okay.
The pandemic put a toll on these kids.
Sure.
So basically, since they didn't go to school, he was an active soccer player. So the soccer sessions, stopped. School stopped, and basically a couple of things in the background, I think, helped development of these problems. So I don't want to point to just one one contributor. So I know that these all kids staying at home for long hours and not doing anything active normally is a recipe for doing things that they're not supposed to do.
That's true. The pandemic, it was. Yeah. I was losing the soccer and losing a lot of, I'm sure that did have an impact on every kid, but losing the sports, both from the active and the social side, that probably did have a big impact on him.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, my concern is, maybe he didn't, I'm sure he didn't share things. We have to look at what was your relationship like with him for him to share what he was going through. But it seems like he wasn't doing well, or something is going on before the drug use started, and we have to try to understand what was going on. And as I said, I wouldn't make the drugs the main issue. Of course, now it's a big problem because it can be dangerous, and the ways he's using the drugs can obviously have a harmful effect, but also recognizing what's going on mental health wise, if he does have OCD, depression, the things that might be there. So we actually had a commercial break, but after the break, I want us to explore a little bit more what's going on, what's happened, and then, of course, if you have some specific questions from me, we can get to those as well, okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were with the caller. Let's go back to them now. Caller, are you still there?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So we're talking about your 16-year-old son, and you've been concerned about his recent drug use that you found out about 6 months ago. So tell me a bit more about, did you notice any of the signs or the things that the psychiatrist said about OCD, these types of things? Have you noticed that in him?
I noticed, he want a thing a certain way, but it was maybe several years ago that he was so. So, but basically, even what he discussed with this psychiatrist was that it was several years ago. Now he is better, but based on the forms that he had filled out, they came up to this conclusion that he has OCD. So, but even if that is still valid, it may not be very strong. So it's not a serious type of OCD.
Okay.
Since then, one of the changes that we have faced is that his bathroom visits, his showers, are taking way too long.
Well, that itself could be related to the OCD.
Yes, and this is basically since that 6 months ago. So it was not so. He was so filled up prior to this. His schedule was so filled up with the sports that basically and also school, that he didn't have much time to basically spend in the washroom or taking long showers. So it may be that the problem was there, but because of the external reasons, he basically was forced himself to get out and do his own stuff.
It could be, but do we know what he's doing in the shower? I mean, if he's taking that long, my first thought...
We don't know.
Okay. It could be related to the OCD. He might have... Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes he sits there and, go takes his cell phone to the washroom, and sometimes he watches movies. Sometimes he, texts to friends, and sometimes he plays. That's my impression. So I think these are the stuff that he does when he goes to washroom. And the showers, we hear the sound of the water, but what is exactly he's doing there, we don't know.
Okay.
We just know that he likes long showers.
Yeah, my concern is, does he have some kinds of rituals or something that he's doing? Sometimes people with OCD will take very long showers because they have certain rituals or routines, or cleaning, obviously can be one of the forms of OCD. But
I believe he just wants to be under warm water, just as soothing or relaxing.
Okay.
That's my impression. No, I don't believe he's cleaning himself meticulously, I don't believe so, because
Okay.
once he gets out, you should see something extraordinary that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So the other dimension to this problem is that almost at the same time as we noticed that he was smoking weed, he basically got into a relationship with a girl,
Mm-hmm.
one of the girls from his school, and we didn't. So basically, they visit each other either in my house or their house. They go out with each other, and we are not 100% sure if the girl is also part of the substance abuse equation. So we don't have enough reasons to believe so, but this is a suspicion that we have. Every time she's with the girl, he comes home happy and with a different mood that we can relate it to having taken something. Although we also know that it can be because they like each other.
Right.
So yeah, we don't have a black and white indicator as to where it is coming from. But the couple of times that he was out, one of the recent times that he was out with the girl, we tested him after the visit, and the THC became positive.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the day after, he said, "Yeah, take me to these home kits are not accurate. Take me to a lab, a medical lab, and I'll test there." But we found that he has bought something. I think it's called Certain. It is something that my wife looked up online and found out that this is something that can alter the positive THC result in labs.
So this is my concern: is if I wouldn't get into this cat and mouse game of we're going to catch him, that he has it in his system or he doesn't. Let's say it's positive. What are you going to do then? So he has weed in his system.
Basically, we restart, because the sessions with this counselor, he is not refusing, but he doesn't show interest in having further sessions with the counselor. I think we will resume that, and also we will resume the efforts to take him out of that habit.
Okay, but
whether it is,
but if he doesn't want to stop,
help from professionals.
Sure, but if he doesn't want to stop smoking weed, he's not going to. So that's what I'm saying. Is,
most possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can't. It's not. It's as much as we would like to be able to control that, you really can't. And so if you get fixated on, I'm going to figure out if he's using it or not, you're just going to push him further away from you, and he'll try to find ways. And as you're saying, they can even fake urine tests, buy urine that's clean from people. They do all sorts of things. So if we get into this kind of arms race of like figuring out, is he using or not, you're probably going to distract yourself from maybe he's not okay. I'm more concerned, is he depressed? Is he, does he have OCD? How is he doing? More than I'm just fixated on the drug use. And the way you talked about him, I got the sense you don't think he's really dealing with any kind of serious mental health issue, which he might not be. But I also wouldn't want us to undermine or not face that maybe he's not doing okay.
It might be. One of the problems that we have with him is that he used to have many friends, and now his circle of friendship is maybe just a few boys and this girl, maybe 2 boys and 1 girl. And this is something that is basically concerning for us, that he has basically he's not showing interest in seeing people, and even he doesn't want to. The new people, he doesn't want to be new people, and he is basically reducing connections to his former friends, older friends. These are all concerning. It's not that that our concern is only the drugs. So basically, we want him to get into his life before the substance use, and get into the activities back again. And the environment is cooperating, so gradually the soccer fields are opening, these restrictions are reduced, so it's getting there, and we are hoping to help him in any manner we can. And maybe that brings me to the main question I have for you, because one of the things that we are considering is relocating to a different part of city, where his school catchment, are schools with a lot better environment. So my main question from you is the plus and basically cons and pros of moving to a different neighborhood, not to mention that he has two other siblings that moving to a different neighborhood may lose their connections. So we know that this is basically a con of doing so.
So what are you hoping?
For himself, as he doesn't have much contact.
What are you hoping will be accomplished by moving?
That he goes to a different school with better environment.
So better means away from those kids that introduced him?
The school that he goes at the moment, it's in a mostly refugee and lower income people with higher, or as we see it, the higher rate of unhealthy stuff.
Do you mean
moving to a neighborhood?
Well, if you're talking about drug use is pretty consistent across groups. Like, I'm not saying it's exactly going to be the same. I don't know these two different locations, but if the desire is to get him away from the drugs, I don't think that's going to work, because whatever high school you take him to, there'll be drugs there. So I think, again, I think the drugs is becoming the main issue, rather than we need to connect more with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's your wife in the background or who's.
Yeah.
But to me, the moving is not gonna. He's not doing well. I mean, if he's snorting Tylenol, I'm concerned about how he's doing, and moving him is probably not going to be the solution. And he needs to, first of all, whatever help you're trying to get him, he needs to want that help, because just taking him to a therapist is not going to do anything unless he wants to go to the therapist. So we need to connect to him more than fix him right now. And right now I feel like the connection is not quite there. And the more we fixate on drug tests and, is he using, or does he use with her or with him? And then if we take him or her out of the equation, it's going to change. It probably won't do much other than make it that he's going to feel more distant from you. Because right now you've created a scenario where he should try to hide things from you because he wants to do things that you don't want him to do. And that unfortunately just means that he's going to get more distant from you and his mom. And it makes it harder for you to help him. So I would focus on trying to get closer to him and changing the dynamic away from catching him, if he's using or not. I'm not saying him using is good, or even I like it, especially the way he's using pain medication and using Xanax and anti-anxiety. Those can be risky. Snorting medications, that's telling us he's getting into some type of risky behaviors that I would be worried about. So I'm more worried about how he's doing, and we need to connect with him and make sure he's okay, more than just is he using this drug or that drug, and it's a big ask and a big thing. And I'm hoping with things opening up, and if he gets back into soccer, definitely those can have some big positive impacts. But overall, I would want you and his mom to focus on connecting with him more. Oftentimes as parents, we try to manage their life in a certain way, which is part of parenting, but we can lose sight of the connection side of things, of how are we relating to him. Because ultimately, if he's not doing okay, I would rather he can tell you than to turn away. We're at the end of the show, so I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts and questions that I can hear.
Just to give you, I even told him that, if you are, we have told him that if you are going to take, if you need anything, just let us know, and we may be able to.
But if he says I want to go buy weed, you're not gonna. I don't know if you're gonna take him, right? So I know you're saying that to him, but it's probably not true. That if he says I want marijuana today, you're not going to drive to the store and buy it for him. And I'm not saying you necessarily should, but I get it that you want to create that openness with him. When it'll take some time. I do have to stop the show because we have someone after me. But if you'd like to call in another time, we might be able to continue the discussion. But continue, only if he wants to help, you can get him that help. But again, we do have to wrap up. But thank you for calling.
You're very welcome. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. All right. That brings us to the end of today's show. Big thank you to Ghazaleh here in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful day.